there are situations that occur all the time that end up where someone passes away and what that individual intended with their assets didn't actually happen. And what happened instead was the opposite of what they intended. And it's because we have busy lives and we forget things, or we don't remember we did this, that, or the other in the first place. And then sometimes it's just way out there. So I want to share a story of something that happened to my late mom long ago. My stepdad, when they got married, did a codicil to his will, which is a addition, addendum, modification of his will. And in there, he said that my mom, if he predeceased her, my mom would be able to live in his place for as long as she lived. So my stepdad tragically died of a heart attack, and we have the funeral, and then we're having a family reception later. And that's when one of the relatives asked, when was Mom moving out? And asked my oldest brother, when was Mom moving out? And he said, oh no, she's staying here. Our stepdad put this codicil that she could stay the rest of her life. Well, for tax reasons, the property had gone into a trust, which meant that the will no longer mattered at all, because the trust predetermined where the value, the ownership of that property was going to go. Bam. We had to move our grieving mom into an extended stay hotel till we could find a place for her to live. It was not just our mom. One day I got a knock at the door at our home, and a neighbor who I didn't know well, lived 3 doors down, was crying. Her husband had just died, and she found out from her stepkids that she was being evicted. And it was a similar kind of thing. There was a trust for the home. In her now deceased husband's will, it said that she would inherit the house, but it meant nothing because the house was no longer a legal asset of him. It was in the trust. And those are extreme cases, but it's weird that the same thing that happened to my mom happened to this neighbor. It was just terrible. I mean, for a widow to already be grieving and then have no place to live too. I mean, my goodness.
That's crazy.
It was a crazy story.
Yeah.
My mom ended up fine. Everything was great. Don't worry about, but not everybody has a family there that can rally around and support. And then where are you? And those are extreme examples, but happen because so many things people do for legal or tax reasons that the overall implications they don't know. Common example at work. Some of you will have a 401k, or they'll have, independent of work, they'll have an IRA, or they'll have a bank account or investment account or whatever. And you're given an option of naming a beneficiary. So they name a beneficiary. Well, then life happens. And maybe you're no longer with that person. Maybe you're now with somebody else. Maybe it's a divorce and then a remarriage or whatever it is. And so you do a will and you name that you want this asset to go to this person, this asset to go to that person, all that. Guess what? It means nothing pretty much anywhere in the country if there was a designated beneficiary that is superior in almost all cases, to what's in the will. Let me tell you, we've had that question from people where the ex got the money from the investment account or the bank account or the whatever because nobody remembered there was a designated beneficiary. You know, these little instant decisions, you're filling out a form now today online. Say, would you like to designate a beneficiary? And you're like, sure. And you put in whoever, or you split it like with whoever. And then you do pass away, and it could be many decades later, hopefully. And then your money goes not where you intended, but to where you did actually, in an instant, put it on a form forever before.
So are you saying don't, like if you have a will, don't name beneficiaries?
Don't name beneficiaries. No, just make sure. Now, this is something, if you have a lot of assets, you're hopefully going to an estate attorney anyway.
Mm-hmm. Like, what do you consider a lot?
Well, that's an individual thing. Most people consider they're really rich if they have somewhere approaching $1 million. And so that's a point where it's really a good idea. If you own a business, good idea to see a lawyer who does wills, estates, and trusts. I mean, there are situations, blended families, probably a good idea to go see a lawyer who does wills, estates, and trusts. And then you do that kind of housekeeping. And a lawyer who does wills, estates, and trusts, well, that's one of the questions they'll ask. Do you know if you have beneficiary designations on any of these accounts that you have? Because they'll ask you for an account list, an asset list. And then they'll say, do you have beneficiary designations? Well, most of us aren't going to have the privilege of sitting there with one of those expensive per hour estate attorneys. So we've got to do this for ourselves. When you make an asset list, if your life has been through changes over the years, which whose hasn't, you want to make sure what your beneficiary designations are, which you can usually see by signing in to your account. It'll be under profile, and you change them, or people who have more assets may be asked to delete beneficiary designations because it may be better for assets to pass through a will or a trust or something like that that an estate attorney would advise you on. But for everyday earthlings, just remember this is an unintended consequence when stuff doesn't go where you might intend. And by the way, there are a lot of us who think we're invincible and we're going to live forever, and we never do a will. That can be a really bad idea, particularly if you have minor children. You need to have a will because that's key to who ends up raising your kids. You don't want the state to decide who raises your kids for you.